Hello, my name is Antonio Papano. I'm a patron of the Keyboard Charitable Trust. I was born in Britain. I've lived and studied in America, and now divide my time mostly as music director of the Royal Opera House Covent Garden here in London and the Santa Cecilia Orchestra and Chorus in Rome. Music has no borders, and the Keyboard Trust neither. Over its long history, it has presented young concert pianists of 34 different nationalities, offering them performing opportunities internationally and now globally by means of these internet broadcasts. All are ready to grace the great concert halls. I now invite you to hear them in conversation and in concert. Please remember their names, then ask the Keyboard Trust to send them to perform where you are. Then you too will have helped to accomplish our true mission. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Steinway Hall. At last, with the pandemic, we are allowed to enter the hallowed hall of all these wonderful pianos. Unfortunately, not with the public yet. And we've got a very fine Bosnian pianist playing for us, Damir Durmanovic, who's going to play a very, very interesting program, starting with C.P.E. Bach and ending with Rachmaninoff. This is the Keyboard Trust. We're so happy that we're able to offer these engagements to these young musicians. We're not able to offer our usual tours at the moment. We hope now that things are changing and the tours and the other concerts we can offer these artists will be available again. But in the meantime, we've decided that we're going to have all these young pianists that we've selected, and we're going to give them a chance to perform to you, streamed live, and so that you can enjoy their performances, they can enjoy the fact that they're playing at last to an audience. And all this with the Keyboard Trust, which have been for 30 years now, have been helping young musicians. And we're helping them. If you felt you wanted to make a contribution, anything that you could contribute would go to organising more concerts for more young musicians. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Damir. That was absolutely wonderful. I don't really know what to say about that. We're going to have a nice conversation. You're going to tell me all about your studies and everything else. But let me just first of all apologise and introduce myself. I'm Christopher Axworthy, one of the trustees of the Keyboard Trust and one of the artistic directors. And I'm just would like to have a conversation, just find out a bit. You're from Bosnia, which will explain exactly where it was, my ignorance of course. But your early studies, you said you studied, you were eight years old when you started. But you have an ear, you know where you are. Were you born with this perfect pitch?
No, I don't have perfect pitch.
You don't have it?
My dad's a musician, he's a guitarist. So my first exposure to music wasn't classical music actually, it was probably jazz, blues, and early rock of the 70s.
What, you were playing piano?
No, my dad was.
Oh, your dad was, yeah. You went straight into classical music, or were you enticed into the, let's say, light music as well? Or
so the first time I touched the piano was when I was 2 or 3, but that was only briefly. Then my parents thought it was too early, so I didn't really. And then later on, my father opened a jazz club with a few of his friends, so technically my first instrument was drums.
Oh really? Did you still have the jazz club? Is your father still playing?
No, it's not, because it's not in demand anymore. Folk music is what people usually listen to in my region now. And then after that, I started playing the piano and guitar. But I wasn't playing classical guitar, but I was doing, as I said, jazz, blues, and rock.
Oh really?
Things like that. I was playing tennis at the same time.
Tennis?
Yeah, it was a very hectic period. And then later on, I heard a few recordings on YouTube and just fell in love.
You mean classical music or jazz music?
Classical music. I think the first recording I heard, was Richter playing.
Yeah.
And then I fell in love immediately and started practicing.
And then you started having piano lessons at the age?
I enrolled in my primary music school in my hometown when I was 8, but I didn't practice for 2 years.
Because every town has a music school, its own music school.
It does, yeah. It's not like here where you have private music schools. Every town has a.
Yeah. And from that, if you're particularly talented, particularly well, do you move on to something, a higher school education, or what happens?
No, as I said, for the first 2 years I didn't practice because the curriculum was very boring. I think it's still the same up to this day.
But what sort of technical training did they give you? Was it very rigid, very intense, the technical training? Because we get the impression in the East that you get a very intense technical training that we don't really get here.
No, it's nothing like Moscow, but we did scales. I was never personally a fan of scales, but then I started reading music on my own, and that's when my teacher really noticed.
Yes.
That's when we started doing pieces. And I didn't really practice scales. Obviously, I would play through them, but I read through a lot of music, a lot. I remember going through my computer and reading, for example, Chopin Second Scherzo, reading a few bars, memorizing, then going back.
Yeah. Computer, when were you born? There weren't computers when I was at school. When were you born, if you don't mind?
1999.
So you're 23?
Yeah, 22.
22 now, 22. So you did it, and then what happened? Because afterwards, I know you went to the Menuhin school when you were 14. But how did that happen?
Well, that was accidental. We met my mother's friend who was working for this charity, and there was a British guy involved named Paul Jones. And so
that's a British name, isn't it?
Yeah, very British. And so his friends suggested, since I was supposed to come to a festival in London, that I apply for the Menuhin school, which I didn't hear of at the time. So they sent a recording from a competition I did at Zagreb in Croatia, and I was invited to the school to do an audition in March of 2013. And after that is history.
Yeah, in Zagreb, why Zagreb? That's a big center? Was it bigger than in Bosnia? I mean, or was that just a music festival?
There are lots of music competitions in Serbia, Croatia, and Slovenia. So I went to a few ones in Belgrade.
Yeah.
One in Zagreb, which doesn't exist anymore actually, that competition, and I went to one in Slovenia. But those weren't competitions like we have in the West. You would have, for example, 15 first prizes. So first prizes from 95, for example, from 95 to 100 points.
Yes, yeah.
And then everyone who gets in that range, something in that range will get a first prize.
And you were doing music combined with your ordinary studies at school?
Yes, I was.
Yes, yeah.
So I would finish school, for example, at 1, and then I would later, at the end of my primary school, it was quite convenient because the schools were very, very close. So I would finish primary school, my normal studies, and I would go to.
And you never mentioned into jazz, like your father? You were never tempted on the piano to improvise, or?
Actually, I wasn't, but I tell you what, I want to pick up the guitar again, actually.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What, classical guitar or?
No, jazz, blues, rock.
Oh, really?
So.
Oh, wow. That's terrific. Yeah. Yeah. But then you went to the menu school. But then you were saying you studied the fortepiano, so your ornaments and everything are historically informed. You were.
So when I came to Medtner school, actually, I didn't know much about it. I actually didn't know much about fortepianos.
Do you have fortepianos in Bosnia? Is it something that
actually don't?
Could you, or harpsichord or baroque music? Is it very much followed there or not?
I think people have never heard of a fortepiano in Bosnia. I gave a lecture about a month and a half ago to the students and professors of the high music school there. And I talked about how instruments have changed since the 18th, 19th century.
Yes.
And I was talking about also the treatises that were written in the 18th century. For example, you have a treatise written by Quantz for flute playing, and you have one for violin playing by Leopold Mozart, and of course for the keyboard, the Versuch by C.P.E. Bach.
Which you played today. But I was writing notes for CD on the second book of the Clavier, and someone told me, in fact, Maurice Rossenturi told me that. She told a friend of mine, and this was a great friend of mine, she didn't actually tell me this, but she said that in the second book, Bach wrote out his own ornamentation, because he didn't like the ornamentation that people were adding to his music before that. Is that true? Do you know about that?
So if you take the suites, for example, the second English suite, if you take the Scriabin, you can see, for example, in the Urtex edition, he wrote out the ornamentation for the repeat. So there are a few instances for that. And I think it's true to some extent for the second book of Well-Tempered Clavier, but still there is more room, I think, especially in the preludes for ornamentation. But the ornamentation is mostly found in suites.
And what about the repeats then? Do you think that you should absolutely do the repeat because you have to ornament the second time, or is it up to your own personal choice?
So the evidence suggests, so there is a set of 6 sonatas which Robert Levinet had called sonatas of varied reprises by C.P.E. Bach. And he wrote out the ornamentation for the repeats, and it's completely different, entirely different.
Yes.
We also know from Mozart's pupils, for example, Barbara Ployer, he dedicated which concerto, so it was 14 K449. Number 17 K453 and A major K488 to her. The evidence that we have is that she wrote out the ornamentation that Mozart played in the second.
So you would ornament.
So he wrote out the ornamentation in the middle of the movement.
Yeah.
And she wrote it out because most of the people weren't very good improvisers. Mozart could improvise everything on the spot, and you can see from the other concertos that he wrote, which he knew he was going to play himself. He didn't write ornamentation.
No.
Such instances, the second movement of K466. There, he didn't write anything. Almost, you know this passage.
So you would ornament that?
Yeah, he wrote it out because obviously ink was expensive, paper was expensive as well.
Yes.
So he knew he was going to play it himself, so he didn't really need to write much. And there are instances where he actually didn't have time to write certain passages.
Yeah.
So he just wrote cues that we have to concerto 482, third movement, where he literally write just day, autumn, dark notes.
Yeah.
And he would expect you to probably play arpeggio there.
Yeah. So you would do that, would you? You would elaborate the.
Yeah.
You would. Yeah.
You would in those instances. For
Yeah.
Chopin, I have to say, I'm not entirely sure.
You did add ornamentation, you augmented the ornamentation. I wasn't quite sure, but I thought that's not quite what I'm used to hearing.
Yeah.
And the ending too, you flourished, which added on led on to the next piece, which is they used to do that in the old days, the beginning, the old virtuosi. They used to join one piece to the next by modulation, that sort of thing.
So the reason I did that is because, well, I programmed most of the pieces. So when I programmed them, I was taking account of key relations.
Oh, you were, yeah. So that the program had a definite structure to it.
So I think that's the most important thing when people program, and they don't do, is to look at the key relations. Because if you program a piece in F minor and then play something in B major, it's not going to sound very...
This is what Jan was saying the other day, and you both studied with Marcel Baldet at the Menuhin School. Is this something that came from him, or is it something...
No, I remember Robert Levin talking about this when he came to Menuhin School.
Yeah.
And he talked about how Nadia Boulanger, when she was in a coma, and they were putting on a program, I think they were doing a Monteverdi Mass or something like that, and then they wanted to do Ave Verum Corpus by Mozart. And as soon as he said that, apparently, I'm not sure if it's true, that's what he, according to him, she woke up and said, no, F minor and B major cannot go on.
Who said this?
Nadia Boulanger.
Oh, Nadia Boulanger, yeah. She came to the academy as well when I was there. I followed her around for a week. No one knew who she was. And I followed through all the classes she did. Amazing sense of style, and the ears were just listening. She was a very old lady. She was staying with the Menuhin in the Menuhin house at that point.
I think she had one of the greatest, had one of the best perfect pitches ever. I think Brahms is one example. Another is Pierre Boulez. There was a rehearsal, I'm not sure if you've seen during the Albenberg concert piece, orchestral pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And he stops the trumpets, he heard there was something wrong. It's an atonal piece.
Yes.
So he could...
No, I've heard of Boulez being able to do that. Yeah, that's amazing. They're really amazing. But his pieces are impossible. Anyway, have you played any Boulez?
I'm not a fan of modern music, actually. As far as I go, it's probably Messiaen. But
you stop at Messiaen?
Yeah, I stop at Messiaen.
Yeah, oh, I see. Yeah. But I see you've taken the Russian school as well. I mean, after you've been, man has been brought up on historically informed instruments and so on, but you really play the Russian music fabulously well. I mean, like you were born to play it, basically. Why is that? Do you feel particularly at home with the Russian school of music, and this Blumenfeld as well, who I've only ever heard about him being a teacher of Horowitz, but you said saying earlier on Horowitz never played any of his music, but you played it, and it was a very impressive piece. Yeah. Tell us about Blumenfeld and how you found that, and what you're planning to do with it as well.
So I discovered Blumenfeld on YouTube, actually. Same story as my beginnings. And I heard these 24 preludes, and I thought they were absolutely stunning.
Who was playing them?
There aren't very many recordings of them, and I have to say they aren't very good. So I can't remember the name of the pianist.
Are they published? Can you get hold of the music like you say?
Yeah, everything's on ISLP.
Oh yeah.
But the library in the Royal College of Music had it as well. Very old scores. I think it's the only copy they have. So the 24 preludes, I think, are a masterpiece. Other pieces that are excellent are the Etude for Left Hand, Opus 36.
Yeah.
And there's one concert Etude in F sharp minor, Opus 24, which is excellent as well. His other music, I don't think is, at least I wasn't impressed by it. There were also two impromptus, Opus 45, which are excellent. So that's all I found by Blumenfeld.
But you said Horowitz have never played any of his pieces.
Yes, I heard he wrote some pieces for him, but he never played them. Yeah.
But Horowitz did play Medtner, and you played Medtner.
Horowitz didn't actually play a lot of Medtner. I know from stories that I've heard that Horowitz knew a lot of music. For example, he never played this. He never played this Greek ballad in a concert, I think.
Yes.
But he knew it very well. So he knew a lot of music, which he didn't play in concert. So I'm sure he knew a lot of Medtner.
Do you play a lot of Medtner?
I do, actually. I did a few of the fairy tales. I played in my first year in Menuhin for one of the summer festivals. My friend of mine, Israeli friend of mine, was sight reading a few fairy tales. I heard it, and then I decided to play them that year in the summer festival.
Yeah.
That's how my association.
You know, he died in London. He's buried in London.
He lived in Golders Green, actually.
Yes, yeah. He was because I heard his companion Edna Eels give a recital in the festival hall, And I think she helped him when he was in great difficulty in old age, and he's buried in Hendon Cemetery, I think. As far as I don't really know his music. I always think of Medtner being Rachmaninoff without the tunes. Which is very weird, but listening to you play it, it was very impressive. You know, I don't think I've heard enough of Medtner to be able to appreciate it.
I've picked a melodic, particularly melodic fairy tale. For example, even I find it difficult to listen to the Night Wind Sonata. It's a colossal piece, 34 minutes in one movement.
Yes.
As you said, it's not very melodic. It's very difficult to listen to. But there are a lot of excellent pieces. For example, this Tragic Sonata, Op.39 No. 5, I think is an excellent piece and is very easy to listen to.
Yeah.
And a lot of the fairy tales are.
Yeah.
But, and the second piano concerto actually is very good.
So how many piano concertos are there?
He wrote 3. So first one, C minor, sounds a bit like film music in my opinion, the opening. But the second one is an absolute masterpiece. The first movement is a toccata, huge cadenza in the first movement.
Yeah.
But
could he play it? I mean, was he a master pianist as well, like Rachmaninoff?
There are lots of recordings he did. I think he recorded almost all of his music.
Oh, really?
Almost all.
Yeah.
And they're recordings of Beethoven, the Passionata, and some other pieces. I don't. But the shame is that when he recorded most of his pieces, he was already old.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they recorded here in London, then, presumably.
Yes. He did. In the 40s. There are some recordings, I think, from the 20s and the 30s.
Yeah, but how do you manage with the early music you play so well? With this Russian music, it's so different in style, completely different, you know, and you're not free to improvise as you are in the earlier music. This is all written down, so you are not actually adding anything at all. But in the Mozart, beautiful. Some of the ornamentation you did in Mozart was really beautiful, almost Haydn-esque, I would say, if I may say that. But that was all your invention. I mean, you were adding. Do you do it on the spur of the moment, or is it something you worked out beforehand?
Some of them are on the spur of the moment. Ideally, I would like to get to a position where I can do them on the spot. But then, for example, if I'm doing exams, they'll judge me by that and say I messed up, for example.
Yes.
You know. But I would rather make them do them on the spot because it'll have more value.
I don't think they would ever play that for an exam. Most sort of things doing that. They always say don't play any Bach in a international piano competition because you have the jury will be fighting amongst themselves, you know.
I mean, the sad thing is if I did these things in a competition, most people wouldn't understand what I was doing.
No, but it's beautiful. And the Schubert playing too was very masculine, very not at all when they're used to hearing this. I've heard you play the A major sonata, which you just recorded as well, the big A major. I heard you play it some time ago in St James's Piccadilly. Are you planning to play lots more Schubert, or is that in the pipeline to do most of his works? Because you played quite a lot of his works, I think. Yeah.
I did more Beethoven, but I have to say that I think if Schubert lived longer, he would have been a better composer than Beethoven. Because his later works are masterpieces. And we have to take into account, Schubert started composing when he was 13, 14, died when he was 31.
Yes.
In those 17, 18 years, he managed to write 9 symphonies. By the time Beethoven was 31, he's only managed to write 1 symphony. And he wrote, 21 piano sonatas. Some of them are not finished, of course.
Yes.
9 symphonies.
It's amazing.
The sheer amount of music he wrote in that period, I mean, in the period of 18 years.
Did he write it all down, or was it like Mozart? Bach, he wrote in shorthand, and it was written out for him afterwards? How did he write it down? How did he manage to write so much stuff? Just to write it down would take years, let alone compose it and perfect it.
I think he was writing himself. Same with Mozart. And in the Mozart Neue Ausgabe, as Robert Levin said, there are 23,000 pages of music Mozart wrote.
Really?
23,000 pages.
Yeah, Robert Levin is amazing, isn't he? What Robert Levin knows is absolutely like an encyclopedia. It's actually amazing. Yeah.
As I said earlier, if you ask him to, if you say, for example, K4, 4, second movement, bar 23, I think you'll be able to play that bar.
Really? Isn't that amazing? Yeah, a bit like, well, perhaps more than Ballenlager, but it was that sort of informed, historically informed, that just living in that period, they just know everything at all. Absolutely. it's fascinating what you're saying. Now, what are your future plans then? Can we ask you that? You're finishing your studies now in London this summer, and you're planning to go on to study further?
Yes, we'll see what happens. I'll apply to Germany and Switzerland maybe.
Are you going in for international competitions? Do you believe in doing the competition circuit, or is that not for you?
Well, the problem is I'm not a big fan of competition to start with, because I can't because I can't do the things that I want, and
you should be able to.
Yeah.
That's wrong. The internet, that should put you in a straitjacket like that. That's really, I don't think that's really acceptable for a real artist. You can't. So I think a lot of real artists, I mean, look at Andrew Schiff, Andrew Hewitt, people like this have never won a competition, Paul Lewis, but they are very extraordinary artists.
Schiff actually did win a prize in Leeds, and Tchaikovsky actually in the 70s.
He didn't win the Leeds, he came second or third.
Yeah, he came second.
Mitsuko Showa, he came second and he came third. He tied with Pascal Levoyan. He was third, and I think Tchaikovsky didn't win. I heard him play the Tchaikovsky piano concerto, which seems outlandish now. And a ship could have played that. I think it's outlandish that Barenboim could ever play a Rachmaninoff piano concerto. It sounds quite absurd. But in their youth, of course, they were all having a go at trying to find an audience, basically, which is what you're doing now, what we're all doing in the pandemic. We're hoping that now we'll be able to have an audience. So today has been wonderful that we've been able to give you an audience, even though we're here. But the people that are watching us now, I'm sure they will appreciate your playing, and I hope if they have access to concert societies, they'll talk about young people like you and offer you the engagements that you deserve. But thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you for the invite.
And good luck with your career.
Thank you.